Challenge number 9 now. Let's not overlook the obvious. Pharaoh had free will, something that Calvinists deny. He was clearly able to release the Israelites before God hardened his heart, according to Exodus 4:21. And even after God hardened his heart, Exodus 10:3. He wasn't unable, he simply refused.
Okay, back to answer challenge number 9. This one was a fairly simple challenge, quote unquote, by Mr. Ruggiero. I don't want to state the obvious, but Pharaoh had free will. Okay, so I'm going to look at a little passage of scripture here and just kind of explore it. I'm not going to go into the whole philosophical reasonings behind free will and what it means and stuff like that. I think I've done that in a couple of other videos explaining exactly what libertarian free will is and why it doesn't exist, even why God doesn't have a libertarian free will in that philosophical sense. So let's look at John chapter 8, starting in verse 31, and it says here, it says, "So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, 'If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.'" So Jesus is talking about a type of freedom here. Freedom here, and they're being set free, kind of presupposes, first of all, that there was a point when they were not free, when they were in bondage, when they were in slavery. And Jesus is, at this point, he's really not referring to a type of physical slavery, but a spiritual one. So they answered him, this is the Pharisees here, they answered him, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say we will become free? Now this is a funny statement. This really brings out Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is desperately wicked. So you look at the history of the Jews. They started out, they were slaves to Egypt. They've gone under captivity, in one sense, at least, as a whole people of God's covenant people, to Assyria, Babylon. They were under different kingdoms. Even now, they're under the Romans. They're blind to their own slavery. It's kind of funny. This actually reminds me of The Matrix. I know I'm going to get some emergent hits for this because I'm using movies, but where Morpheus tells Neo, that you are a slave. Neo tells him, you're in a prison, for your mind, a prison that you can't see, taste, hear, touch. It's a prison for your mind. This is kind of, the Jews are missing that point here. They're thinking only physical slavery. So it says here in verse 34, Jesus answered, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who commits sin is a slave to sin." Now Jesus is revealing something here, that the one who is committing sin is a slave to sin. They're revealing what they are. They commit sin because that's what they do. They're in bondage to sin. The only way to be set free is through Christ. He says here, "If you abide in my word, you're truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." We need to know the truth about Jesus Christ. That doesn't happen. A slave can't just go, "Oh, I'm going to set myself free." No, that wasn't the way that it worked here. At least, in this kind of analogy. Going down, the slave does not remain in the house forever, and the son remains forever. So if the son sets you free, you will be free indeed. So the big thing here, Pharaoh had free will. The challenge really here, for Mr. Ruggiero, is first of all, you need to prove free will. You need to define it, and then you need to prove it from Scripture. Now, what it seems like he's saying is that free will is just an ability. Again, nobody's denying that he had the ability. What we're looking at is the moral capacity. Did Pharaoh have the freedom to obey God? Or was Pharaoh so bound to his own selfish desires? Was he so self-absorbed in his own sin, not knowing it? Again, the heart is deceitful above all things. I think it's the case, rather, that Pharaoh was enslaved to his own sin, to his own pride. He didn't know, and he couldn't set himself free. If Pharaoh was going to truly please God, he would need to have been born again, regenerated by God in order to be able to do that. So the challenge, Pharaoh had free will. Really, free will is an idol in the church here. I'd have to say that. It's not proven. It's a philosophical presupposition. It does not come from Scripture. What we see consistently in Scripture about the nature of man, about the nature of our fall into sin, is that it's so pervasive, it's universal, it's extensive in everything that we do. Just to quote, Romans 3:10 through 18. Here is the indictment. The apostolic indictment of our depravity. No one is righteous. No, not a one. Let's just say Pharaoh was not righteous. Pharaoh did not understand. Pharaoh did not seek for God. All have turned aside. Pharaoh turned aside. Okay, Pharaoh became worthless. Pharaoh does not do good. Pharaoh's throat is an open grave. I'm really trying to put this here because it would certainly apply to Pharaoh. Pharaoh uses his tongue to deceive. Don't we see that in Pharaoh? Yeah, I'll let y'all go. You know what? I changed my mind. There it is. The venom of asps is under Pharaoh's lips. His mouth is full of curses and bitterness. His feet is swift to shed blood. Did he not take off very quickly to go and pursue Israel? What was his intention? Oh, hey guys, I just wanted to say goodbye. No, Pharaoh wanted to destroy Israel. In Pharaoh's paths are ruin and misery, and the way of peace he has not known. There is no fear of God before Pharaoh's eyes. So just inserting from Romans 3:10 through 18, Pharaoh, those are qualities that we see in Pharaoh. Pharaoh was not righteous. Pharaoh was not free to be righteous. Unless Mr. Ruggiero is going to assert that Pharaoh was free to be righteous apart from Jesus Christ, that Pharaoh could freely become pleasing to God whenever he wanted to. No, salvation is of the Lord. And so the idea that Pharaoh had free will to do whatever he wanted to do and not what God wanted him to do is certainly something that goes directly contrary to Scripture, to basic theology about God, and again, it just goes really beyond Scripture. So that is my answer to challenge number 9. It's not very complex, but it's just, I just want to point out the absurdity of that challenge by Mr. Ruggiero. Thanks.